So we will start, and we'll start with Denise Bloomquist.
All right. I'm going to ask a question to begin to Chief Vasquez. Your campaign materials promote the fact that crime has been reduced by 42% since you came into office. Since the Uniform Crime Report has two parts, Part 1 offenses including violent crimes like murder, aggravated assault, forcible rape, etc., and also some property crimes, while Part 2 offenses are less included, simple assaults, DUIs, fraud, etc. Is the 42% reduction consistent across all types of crimes in both Parts 1 and 2, or are there some types of crimes within these categories that have significant reductions, while others may have continued at the same rate or possibly increased across that time frame? And if so, which ones would they be?
Denise, that's quite a long question. No, it's basically it's the overall from 2003, which was the year prior to me taking office, to 2014, which was the last year that's available through UCR and DPS website. So it does, all crimes vary. You could see some crimes that are rising and some are going down. In our community, what we see is a rise of property crime. Fortunately, we've had a decrease in violent crime, which is something that you're seeing across the country in some areas. Some areas are actually seeing a rise in that. But overall, it's an overall number showing that the crime is down.
What will you do to promote teamwork and better relations with other law enforcement agencies? And what will you do to promote teamwork and better relations within the SAPD? Starting with Chief Vasquez.
Okay. You know, that question has come up, or that comment's come up quite a few times. And I believe if you visit with the heads of the other law enforcement agencies in our community, they're going to tell you that we have a good working relationship. I know that the sheriff believes he and I work very well together. It's probably the best working relationship the PD and the sheriff's department have had over many, many years. To continue the teamwork in our organization, I think that the men and women by themselves have become accustomed to working as teams, and that's why we have such great successes.
I believe it's what I've been doing my entire career. If you'll pull articles back from the 90s when we had the six-man gang unit and all the gang problems, other agencies, other officers from the other agencies would always call or visit with me and say they appreciated me giving them the shout out as far as saying that it doesn't just take one of our agencies to do the job, it takes us all, because there's not any one person that knows all the answers.
The way I look at it, I've talked to a lot of officers, and they want to work with us, DPS, Sheriff's Office, and such, but they feel that they're not welcome for some reason. You know, when we used to work together before I retired, we'd help Sheriff's Office with DWIs, we'd help DPS with RECs, and we intermingled a lot more than what we do now, and I feel that it's all about an entitlement. This is my city, this is my county. We need to break those barriers and get the bridges built again.
As part of my platform, that's one thing that I mentioned, agency relationships. They're strained from the top down. It has to do with leadership and has to do with the right people that are respected within the organization. Sure, there are officers on the line level that agree and work handedly with the other officers on the line level of other law enforcement agencies that we deal with, but it starts with the leadership, and you have to have the integrity and respect of other agencies within the department and outside the department. I want to put proven leaders in the right positions. Anybody can hold a position, if you will, or be entitled to a position, but it takes a proven leader and have the respect of the people. Thank you.
This is a question that came from the audience. It asks, does the city need to modify its sector policing system? And we'll begin with Mike Hernandez and work our way down back around to Chief Vasquez.
Absolutely. The sectors are entirely too big. We need to cut them in half at least. Instead of having 4 sectors, we need 8 sectors so that the officers don't have to respond from the other side of town, if you will. When we talk about safety of the citizens and the crashes are up, that includes our officers being involved if they're having to travel at a high rate of speed, whether they're on the loop or not. But yes, we need to cut them in half so that the time of response is increased and then the safety is up on it.
On these sectors, what has happened here, the sector policing was actually designed for more metropolitan areas, smaller cities, the colony, and such up around Dallas-Fort Worth. You have a lot less square miles to cover, and you can split a city up like that where you have everybody bunched up together. But San Angelo, as we all know, from one end to the other, has a lot of square miles. It's roughly 58, 59 miles in circumference. So we need to go back to at least the 8 districts with the rovers that have been proven over many years to work and be effective. And that way you see your officer in the fishbowl all the time. He knows you, you know them.
Sector-style policing is good by its name if you have the manpower to run that particular patrol tactic, if you will. My sector, take for instance, which is the northern section of town, runs from the Bluffs all the way to Paul Land Division, anything north of East-West Freeway, basically. Any given time, I have at the most, 3 to 4 officers in that particular area. I want to go back to what works. I want to get back in the neighborhoods. I want to go back to districts where the citizen knew that officer that was patrolled in that particular area, and that particular officer knew the bad guys in that area. That's where nicknames came from. That's where Burrito came from. That's where McGruff came from. It's people knowing the bad guys in that district. Thank you.
The sector-style policing is designed to put accountability on the lieutenant that's over that particular sector. They're responsible for developing plans that fight crime in that particular area. That being said, it's their responsibility for assigning officers in that area. The sector may be large, but in each sector there are smaller areas called beats and even smaller areas called emergency service zones. The lieutenant has the authority to assign officers to a specific area where crime is occurring. And again, the program was designed to give ownership to those people and to the officers, and I believe it's done that.
About the sector-style policing, the thing about it is, ever since they went to the sector policing, you have seen crime on the rise. You can look it up, research it yourself, but ever since that has happened, you see property crimes going through the roof. We're not in the top 100 as far as being the best when it comes to property crimes. We're sitting outside the 100 mark in the national level, and we're not even in the top 50 as far as rates on property crimes. We're way outside of the bounds.
Being hired in 1992 and was a patrolman for part of my time, I took ownership when I worked a district and worked a particular area. There was a burglary in my area, my district. I took offense to that. I tracked that person down. As with sector-style policing, it's so large, these guys are running from call to call. They have no ownership. There's no nicknames with these guys these days in sector-style policing. They're chasing calls. As I stated, we need to get back in the neighborhoods and let the officers know who the bad guys are and let the citizens know who the police are in your area.
Do I get a rebuttal? Thank you. Being said what he's saying about the officers going call to call, in 2004, dispatch calls were 50,346. In 2015, dispatch calls were 50,406, a difference of 60. However, self-initiated calls in 2004 were 19,812, and currently there are almost 40,000 self-initiated calls. That means our officers are working harder and are more efficient. So whereas before only 28% of our calls were initiated, we're rounding almost half and half now.
I have a follow-up, just a clarification. If you have 8 sectors with the police patrolling in 8 sectors, and then you want to cut it down to 4, does that not mean you're going to have to hire more officers? That's a question to anybody. A clarification because I don't know.
Well, additional officers would be great. We're struggling with that. It seems like we're chasing our tail every time we turn around. We hire more and we lose more. There are patrol tactics or procedures or configurations that we can do within the department to increase the manpower as is. We're working a 410 right now. That's the less conducive for manpower that you can have. We discussed going to a 12-hour versus an 8-hour, which will give you basically the same amount of manpower, an 8 versus 12. We discussed that for our last bump day. I called the sheriff. He said that was the best decision he made.
Who's going? Your question was, do we need more officers to do something different? I think what we're doing is we're maximizing the amount of officers that we have right now and being as efficient as we can. Because of the staffing levels and not having the ability to fund more officers, we've become more efficient. And so we focus on specific crimes during specific times at specific locations. That is policing today and not policing of the past. And I believe that our department has proactive policing policies. If you increase sectors or make more districts, you have to understand you may have an officer assigned to a small geographical area where nothing occurs in that area. It's not efficient.
Okay, I didn't get a chance that first time in reference to sector policing, sir. But, just last night, because of the handful of officers that we put on the street, look, you can check up the public records. Father Freddie Hatch was riding with me. Happened to be in the right place at the right time as far as these points of interest are concerned within our sectors, and caught a thief in progress leaving the Walmart at 5501 Sherwood Way with $715 worth of equipment. It can be done, and we can move some people around within the department.
TxDOT data from 2014 shows that more than 10% of the crashes reported are attributed to distracted driving. What plans, if any, do the candidates have to enforce recently enacted laws against texting and driving? Do y'all plan to work with the ASU police to enforce this also?
Where do we start?
We can start with Mr. Carter.
I heard part of that. It was very difficult for you to understand. Texting and driving, very difficult law to enforce. To this date, as far as I'm aware of, we've probably stopped very few people in reference to it. It's very difficult to monitor. It's just like anything else. I mean, their laws inundated us. But with that, I'm interested to see where the rec stats put us as far as if they're indicated on the rec report they've been texting and driving, and go from there.
In reference to that, unfortunately, when you come across texting and driving, it's after a wreck. Somebody's cell phone is in a vehicle and, there was an accident possibly caused by this individual that possibly was texting, and you find out, you can actually pull records, you can backtrack. And to prevent it, cars, especially around West Texas, have dark tinted windows. At night, sometimes you can see a cell phone light up. You don't know if they're talking on it. You don't know if they're texting on it. It's just like Mr. Carter said, it's tough. But unfortunately, most of the time we find out about violations, it's after the fact.
We do have a traffic control program that we could definitely try to work with other agencies, obviously, to help us out with this. Texting and driving is a safety issue. It has been shown to increase the crashes. However, with the manpower that we have when they're responding from call to call, it's awful hard to stay on top of that. Also, with the law, with the ordinance as it reads now, are those folks using it as a GPS, or are they texting? And then folks still are asking about, am I allowed to talk on my phone? And you are.
I think when you look at the big picture of this, it's distracted driving. Whether it's texting, whether it's eating a hamburger, combing your hair, or putting makeup on. It's the same thing that we see. So distracted driving is a very difficult law to enforce. However, by creating the ordinance that we did here in our community, I think the main purpose behind that was we knew there would be difficulties in enforcement, but we also knew the benefits of awareness. And I think that that has brought some awareness to our community. I think the young people and the old people alike are now more aware of texting and driving because it is a law here in our community.
All right, since this question is for all of you. Since the people of San Angelo have spoken over and over that they favor an elected chief rather than an appointed chief, none of you have to go through a formal interview process, which normally includes questions about you and your own self-awareness as well as job-related questions. So just to give you and the audience the opportunity to learn a little more about the real you, what is your biggest strength? What is your biggest weakness? And what would you do to improve on your biggest weakness? And we'll start with Mr. Hernandez.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? Because that was, I'm sorry.
All right, we'll repeat it. We'll repeat the main part of it. What is your biggest strength? What is your biggest weakness? And what would you do to improve on your biggest weakness?
Well, you are putting me on the spot. My strength, I feel, is my drive and my passion for the job because I love my job. I truly feel like there's days that I just started yesterday. As far as my weaknesses are concerned, I've got some family here, so I have to tell the truth. I'm hard-headed at times, and what I would do in reference to that weakness is put people in place that I'm going to definitely give them my ear because I believe them, I trust them, and we're looking for the same things for our department, for the better of us all.
My strengths are, if I give you my word, I will do everything in my power to back that word up. And I won't tell you anything that I don't have the capability of providing for you. As far as weakness, I would be probably the weakest candidate when it would come to the fact that I have been separated for a while from the police department. I still have a current Master Peace Officer license, and I worked with the military police as a civilian also. But I guess the disconnect for that short while kind of gives me maybe a weakness, but in fact maybe a strength because I'm on the outside looking in, and I've been a regular citizen of San Angelo, so there's been a lot of stresses that I've seen personally that I would like to overcome for the people.
As far as my strengths, it would be experience and proven leadership. I've been with the department nearly 24 years, 17 of that as a supervisor. I've been in many different divisions, many different units within the department. I've seen the big picture. I know our strengths, I know our weaknesses, and I know where we need to focus our attention to improve our department. My weakness, I'm not a politician. I'm out of my comfort zone up here, but I'm here for the right reasons.
I'll start with my weakness. My weakness is something that I've worked on since the day I became the chief, and I have a tendency to expect others to work as hard and as quickly as I do, sometimes putting too much of a workload on certain individuals in our organization. But I'm constantly reminding myself of that. My strength, I believe my strength is my ability to see the big picture and to look at things from an outside perspective other than just as a police officer, but as an administrator and as a citizen of this community. I also believe I have a sense of calmness during very stressful situations and events that have occurred in our community.
This is for all of you. What do you think is the single largest law enforcement problem in San Angelo? And what long-term strategy would you implement to address it? Let's start with Mr. Carter.
From my perspective, I would say narcotics. It's an epidemic in our community. It's an epidemic across the United States, but we being unique and we need to focus on the issues in San Angelo. We have 3 narcotic detectives right now. I want to increase that division. That's the root of all crimes, if you ask me. There are people that do it as a daytime job while you're out working, kick your doors in and everything else, just like that's their living. We need to increase the staffing in narcotics and take an aggressive measure toward it.
I'll agree with him. I've always said that, we have a growing drug problem. We're 150 miles away from the border. Some of the cartels have even started to call this home. We've seen evidence of that. The gangs, they're coming right and left. We see organized gangs, unorganized gangs. You've seen some evidence in the paper here lately of drive-bys and assaults. We have to get out there and aggressively let them understand that this is not their city. This city belongs to us, the law-abiding citizens of San Angelo, and we have to put that message out there strong, and we have to back it up with our force if necessary.
We're in agreement. Narcotics is attributed to thefts, burglaries, violent crime, and then a close second definitely is the rise of the gang members again. We've gotten away from pulling officers from the division where they need to focus on as far as being experts in their field in narcotics, of which I was a detective. And then the gangs as well. When you take away that spotlight, they're going to come out of the woodwork and wreak havoc. We need to put them back in their place.
Some would agree, the problem that we face in our community, and actually is not just unique to San Angelo, but is feeling in country across the country, is our drugs. Drugs are a major issue. Our failure to secure the borders by the federal government is one of those hindrances. But I think we also need to understand that there's going to be a tax burden on our citizens if we also start arresting those individuals and not allowing them. I believe repeat offenders need to stay in jail. And so, but the most significant issue that I think the San Angelo Police Department faces in this next year is the significant decrease in sales tax revenue in our future budget.
This question is for all the candidates. What strategies do police chief candidates have for dealing with uninsured, unlicensed, and unregistered drivers? And we can begin with Mr. Davis.
What we need to do is we need to have more checkpoints. I know it's a manpower issue, but the fact of the matter is when you put that in play, driver's license, insurance checks, you catch a lot of these people. I mean, there's a lot of cities right now that they're not actually doing it for revenue, but they're doing it for a number of reasons. They're getting warrants basically served, people with warrants. They're making drug busts and arrests. They're, finding the people that are driving around without insurance. I mean, the worst thing in the world that can happen to you is somebody, run over you. They don't have any insurance to cover their vehicle. So that's something that we really need to put into play again.
We definitely need to do as much as we can to put a stop to the no insurance drivers. Having a child still at home that is a young driver, it's concerning to me that if there's someone out there with no insurance, that's going to be affect my pocketbook, if you will. And we can, as law enforcement officers at crashes, take care of this, time permitting. We don't have to allow these drivers to drive their vehicles off as far as that's concerned, because it's the law. They have to have insurance.
We have a policy in place now that an officer has the discretion or authority to tow a vehicle, whether it be at an accident scene or on a traffic stop, if they have no insurance. I think we need to get back to the basics and make sure they're following that policy and doing everything they can to have those vehicles towed. I'm not against checkpoints for traffic violations. I am against looking at it from a revenue perspective. It's all about safety of the community, reducing the wrecks, and making sure the people are following the rules that you and I follow, and they're insured. That's what makes the rates go up, is the people that don't have insurance.
Finally, one thing I agree on with Lieutenant Carter. I do think that we need to be checking and make sure the officers are following the policy as it's prescribed, so that we're dealing with the uninsured drivers as we need to. We do have laws in place that we utilize through municipal court that allow those violators that have multiple violations to get their cars towed and held until they actually get insurance. If you go to municipal court, you see a tow truck there 2 or 3 times a day picking up those cars that have multiple violations. And, ultimately the burden falls on us of those people that do pay their insurance.
Okay, I have a question from the audience. What is your position on profiling biker clubs? Is law enforcement uneven in its approach to different clubs? And we can start with Mr. Hernandez.
Okay, that is tough. You want to make sure that you you've seen throughout the country where things can get out of hand. We don't make those rules as far as that's concerned. When there's another club that's looking at the other club with their colors, they're the ones that make the rules within themselves. Working in the gang unit in the early 90s, I learned that. If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and talks like a duck, it is a duck. I'm not the one that made those rules. If somebody's wearing the wrong colors and they get offended, then you have the crews that are in the same colors and they start to react towards each other, and we want to put a stop to that.
When it comes to uh, biker clubs, motorcycle clubs, there are a lot of clubs out there that are not what they call outlaw bikers. I have been a member of the Blue Knights. It's a law enforcement biker club, and a lot of good people. They're all law enforcement and such. So we just have to look at what's their motive. I mean, are they in our town dealing drugs? Are they causing problems? You know, what are they up to? It's all about that. I mean, there are a lot of guys going down the road, and you have to really look at their colors, you know, to find out if they're outlaw or they're just you know, mom and pop club.
We execute on intelligence. That's what we work off of. And obviously, if somebody's flying their colors and we have intelligence that they're a criminal gang unit, I support that we exercise zero tolerance. I don't call it profiling. I call it you're a gang and you're a problem to our society and our city, and we will exercise zero tolerance.
Okay. You know, I think that we have to understand that there are all walks of life that enjoy riding a motorcycle and wearing leather and having a good time and being part of a group. But we have to have the ability to recognize the difference between those and outlaw motorcycle gangs. Fortunately for us, the FBI has designated those that are outlaw motorcycle gangs. We do have a couple in our community, and they are given zero tolerance, as they should. We will not tolerate gang activity from those outlaw motorcycle gangs that have been deemed that by the FBI.
All right. What changes, if any, would your administration make to personnel assignments and deployment of the assets within the department if you are elected or reelected? And we'll start with Mr. Vasquez.
Well, first off, I think when you're talking about adding additional personnel or not adding additional personnel, each year for the last couple of years, I've asked for more from the city council. I've asked to civilianize the PIO positions. So those are some of the things. But to answer your question specifically, my opponents have stated we're going to beef up patrol and beef up narcotics, but there's no place to take them from. Every officer in the department is either assigned to investigative services or to patrol, except for 7. And that would be biting or cutting our nose off to spite our face.
Well, I didn't ask about additional people. What I asked about is, would you make any personnel assignments that are different?
And to answer that, no, I would not. I think we're running as efficient as we can. In order to put more people on patrol, you'd have to take people out of CID. CID already needs more people. To take people and put them in narcotics, you're going to have to take people off patrol. Patrol already needs more people. So we've learned to become more efficient with the staffing that we got and by the design that we've created in our organization.
I'm not in agreement with that one. There are some folks within the department that we could move around. There's some officers working positions that we can look at civilianizing. There's some officers that are assistants to officers or to supervisors that can be moved around. We can do it with what we have, but obviously we would look outside the department as well and look at trying to get laterals within the department.
As far as the department, there's a lot of restructuring as far as personnel. They need to be put in different places, shifted around. I liken it to a balloon that's been stretched out of, shape. You need to put the balloon back in its shape. As far as assets go, I mean, there's a lot of ways we can save money as far as these car allowances and stuff like that. We need to drive what the city provides us. We need to go to hybrids to save money. We can save $4,000 to $5,000 per unit on every car for non-first responders. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do better and we can save money at.
As a start, leadership, putting the right persons in the right position and the persons that are respected by the troops. I can increase the patrol based on a different shift configuration. Look at combining gang and narcotics and making one unit and focus both at the same time. Look at civilianize different positions that we have in the department that are occupied by supervisors, where I think we can civilianize at 50 cents on the dollar. There's more folks in community service right now than there are in narcotics and the gang position.
Can I have a rebuttal? Okay, thank you. You know, the comment about us having an officer assisting a supervisor, that officer is working in professional standards and also manages hiring and our sex offender program, so I'm not willing to give that officer up. In regards to Mr. Davis's comment on the take-home car and utilizing what's given to us, unfortunately, every year, well, it's been several years, but quite often, I've asked to have a car provided instead of a car allowance. The car allowance doesn't even make my car payment. And the city shop is the one that handles the vehicle purchases, so they pick the vehicles for us.
Okay, we have a series of individual questions, so I'm going to ask them to specific people. The first one is for Mr. Carter, so pay attention. Can you explain the large amount of outside contributions to your campaign and why these contributors have such a vested interest in our community and election?
Good question. They're good friends of mine. Yes, they're from the Odessa area. They own, as a family, 4 houses here in San Angelo. Probably each one of them valued over $500,000 apiece, so they pay their taxes. They employ people that take care of their lawn, local employees that build swimming pools and renovations and everything of that need. They're great friends of mine.
Next question is for Mr. Davis. You have gone on record as self-funding your campaign at almost $70,000. Would you, as well as the rest of the candidates, to keep it fair, be willing to provide your tax return to prove this?
Sure. I've already filed it for, and I had to pay more money than what I've, not quite what I've paid out on this campaign, but I'm glad you asked that because, you know, a lot of times we have to make sacrifices for our community and things that we believe in. You know, my family, they're going through the same thing I'm doing. We made the sacrifice because we believe in the people that are sitting in this room, that are in this community, and we love every one of them. And God's been good to us, and He gave us a gift, and we're sharing it with you. So you have a choice.
Rashta,
Okay.
I would share my tax returns.
I'll keep that in mind. So, okay, anyone else wants to respond to that?
He asked if everybody wanted to share their tax returns or if they would.
I will.
I'm in.
You're more than welcome to see my tax return.
I'll give you a copy in the morning if you want it.
Okay, just for the record, these were questions sent in to us. The next question is for Mr. Hernandez. You have a nickname, Burrito. How did you get it, and do you find that culturally offensive?
Not at all. It's a sign of respect, and it is from the days that I worked in the gang unit in the early 90s when I was, got Officer of the Year a couple times. They just chose a food, and what I like to say when people ask is, it's because everybody likes burritos, and if you're watching your carbs, it's a corn tortilla for less calories, and if you don't like chorizo, you get barbacoa. So, everybody likes burritos.
Okay, this last question is for Mr. Vasquez. Several times people have referred that your department is broken, and there's 2 current officers who are running against you, and recently Cleet endorsed Mr. Carter. So how would you explain what's going on within your department, the relationship?
That's an outstanding question. Now, you know, this is not new to our community. We choose to have an elected police chief. As long as we have an elected police chief, we're going to have candidates. Everybody wants this job until they actually get the job. But I love my job, don't get me wrong. As far as Cleet, you know, I was the union president here in San Angelo for a few years. And when I became chief, the state Cleet that endorsed him made me Officer of the Year for this region. And then 6 months later, I disciplined an officer, and we've been at odds ever since. So that's kind of how the unions work, and that's would happen.
This one is for all the candidates. Please describe for us your vision and plan for the police department and how you will implement that plan. Oh, I'm sorry. Beginning with Mr. Carter and coming back around.
Goodness. Well, from day one, I've announced my platform, and I'll stay true to it. I'm committed to improving department morale, narcotics and gang enforcement, recruiting and retention, agency relationships, budget and capital improvement, traffic enforcement, patrol tactics, and manpower. I touched on it already, what some of the things that I see will be imminent, and that's increasing the patrol and looking at a different shift configuration. I'm also committed to combining the narcotics and gang unit to increase that.
I'm going to be committed to doing more differently, not more with less. But what I'm going to do is we're going to implement things like a random drug test. We don't have one in place. I'm going to implement, like I said before, the hybrid vehicles. I'm going to implement, youth programs at risk and others that I think are so important. I'm going to get out there and work with the men and women. I'll be in a car. I'll be accessible to the public and be able to address your situation and issues. And I think that I'm going to bring together everyone because they're going to see me out there working, and I'm going to lead by example.
My vision and plan for the police department, if I should become your chief of police, is to change the culture from protecting and serving to serving and protecting, because that's what we do 95% of the time. Also, to bring those numbers back up, regardless of how we get it done, we can get it done, patrol, narcotics, and the gang unit. And to bring back the human element as far as service is concerned to you citizens, because that's what you pay for. And also to streamline the policing methods that we use as far as the sector policing, intelligence-led policing, problem-oriented policing, and so on.
In 2004, when I ran my first campaign, my slogan was partnering with the public, and ever since then, that's been my focus. From day one, we looked at changing the culture in our community. I think the self-initiated activity obviously shows that there was a significant change in productivity because of that culture change. But we start with hiring people. I don't look for the RoboCop type of person. I'm looking for somebody that's got compassion, that's hard. I can teach them how to be a good officer. We can teach them how to protect themselves and the citizens, but I'm looking for that right person that's going to amount to what our citizens expect in today's world and in today's policing.
I have a follow-up question for Mr. Davis, just a clarification. I think getting hybrids is good for gas mileage, but how would you pay for these new hybrids that you want to bring into the department?
Well, as through attrition, basically, I mean, vehicles, they wear out. We have to buy them on a regular basis. We have throughout my career. And as we replace some of these gas guzzlers, they're getting 6, 7 miles a gallon, some 8, whatever. We have got to look at the issue of fuel, because fuel across the nation, every police department, sheriff's department across this country is facing those issues. And even though fuel is cheaper now, it's starting on the rise again. Oil's going back up, and it will go back up. We have to look at that. And they perfected these vehicles a lot better than they had in the past. They had issues, but it's like anything, it's computers or whatever. When you first start out, you have issues, but these cars are proven to be solid, as commuters.
So you would acquire them through attrition when the old cars wear out, you would buy?
Yes, sir. I mean, there's no way that the city's going to be able to afford a fleet of those, at once.
Thank you.
Being a student at ASU, there's been a lot of conversation about the open carry law. What is your opinion on the open carry law? Do you think that schools and universities should be allowed open carry on campus? And this is open to all candidates. We can start with Mr. Davis.
I'm not really a proponent of open carry. I am a proponent of concealed carry, and I believe in the Second Amendment, and I believe that it's our God-given right by the Constitution. Basically, our forefathers put it in place. I still believe in it. But open carry, I've seen it in Arizona. I've walked in stores and I've seen people, with the 10-inch what I call hog legs. To me that's intimidating. There's like a criminal, if they want to get your gun, say, you're 65 years old and you got a 20-year-old that's built like a bodybuilder and he walks up and he wants to get your gun, it's going to be pretty easy. He knows you have one. If it's concealed, he doesn't know you have one. I think concealed is good, open carried, no.
Which way? This? Okay. Yeah, I'm not for the open carry as well, but it is a law, so that's what's in place. When friends of mine or family have asked, I say, tuck it away, hide it so that they'll never see you coming. In my entire career, nobody ever called in on me saying, I think this guy's carrying a weapon. The reason they came out with that is because some of the accidents that would happen when somebody's shirt over their gun would fly up and somebody would see that and they'd call that in, and so the officers would make arrests for that offense.
I'm going to repeat what an old friend of mine, Kevin Housley, said on KLST one day. He says, I think every man, woman, and child should own a gun. And I do believe in the Second Amendment. Some of y'all might not have understood that, got that child deal in there. I am a supporter of the concealed carry. I've done several presentations on the open carry law, and I feel that tactically it's better to be concealed than it is to be open. But your specific question had to do with the universities and carrying on there. I think time will tell if that's beneficial or not. I had the opportunity to spend some time with the chief from Virginia Tech just months after the Virginia Tech shooting. And my initial instinct, if there were students with guns in that classroom, we might have saved a lot of lives. But it's not just that, it's also understanding the profile of those people that do it.
I'm pro Second Amendment, and I am for open carry. That is your right as a citizen. There's been other states that have went to open carry long ago. They're not experiencing any problems. Would I agree with it? Do I need to carry a gun publicly and open? No, but that is your right, and I'm not going to dispute anybody's rights or privileges with the United States Constitution.
Okay, this question is for Mr. Hernandez. You talk about wanting to change the culture within the department and the community from protect and serve to serve and protect. Could you elaborate on the difference between the two and what you believe needs to be done to create this change? And if funds are involved, how would you pay for that change?
No funds, just being a leader. The divisions that I've been attached to, Special Operations Gang Unit, SWAT, over the years, the teams that I was part of, working as a team, not as myself, by myself, we were very successful because we were all on the same page. When they saw the leader leading by example, they wanted to perform as well. When those guys saw last night that I caught the guy running out of the Walmart last night, they were pulling up, ready to high-five me and things of that nature. That's how I would get it done.
Can I do a rebuttal? I think that when you talk about running and catching a bad guy, that's going towards protecting and serving. I think I've been an example to our organization in regards to the amount of community services that I provide in our citizen through volunteerism and being in those groups. And I think it's that example that our officers see that change that concept from protect to serve to protect.
This question came in from the audience. Does the department retaliate against businesses that deal with biker organizations?
No.
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 I bet I know where that question came from. That was your answer? No.
Repeat your question.
Does the department retaliate against biker organizations or businesses that deal with biker organizations?
I still don't understand you, but I'm going to have to agree with all three of them this time and say no.
Good answer.
I didn't understand it either exactly, and so I went with rest.
We
of
would
the bird
never
south.
retaliate as officers. We took an oath. We carry a badge and gun. When we do our jobs, we do it to the best of our ability. We're not going to pick on folks. When we got the cameras in the cars, I've always said that it made a good officer better and a bad officer gone.
And I want to add on that too. Yes, we don't retaliate. You know, when we take that oath, we swear to be guardians of a democracy, and everybody is afforded their constitutional right, and we are responsible to make sure everyone enjoys the what they have available to them through the Constitution. We deal with those that are in a criminal element, and we deal with them when we deal with them, but we don't retaliate against businesses that do business with biker organizations.
This question is for all the candidates. In your opinion, do you feel that there is a problem in the police department with transparency and trust? And then also, what kind of programs or initiatives would you implement to promote trust building and morale, both in the community and within the department? We'll begin with Mike Hernandez.
Okay, I believe that the community does trust us, but as far as transparency is concerned, in reference to public information, when we share information with the media, you know, an officer-involved shooting, that needs to be a different agency investigating that shooting. So that'll protect us from the citizens and the citizens from us. When we don't allow them to do their job and continue to talk about the investigation, we're tainting the investigation, ultimately not getting that person the time they need in prison.
I believe sharing information with the press is going to help. I believe the random drug testing put in place is surely going to help. I mean, after all, we're the ones that enforce the laws. Shouldn't we be the first ones to stand up and take a drug test? That's no big deal. I've taken plenty working in the oil and gas industry. I took a whole lot of them working for the military. So it's no big deal if you don't have anything to hide. And, I mean, who knows? You might find an issue where somebody has a problem maybe with prescription meds, and you could get them help. You don't need to throw them to the curb. You know, help them out. But yeah, I think it's going to help a lot with transparency should I get elected.
I think as far as trust within the department, it starts with leadership. Those officers need to be shown they're respected and they're liked. I think that's something we got away from. After all, they're the officers that are out there that are defending your house, your domain. They need to know that they're appreciated. As far as transparency, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, we have to be open and transparent to the media. I think all medias have to have fair access to whatever we're doing or any investigation that we got going on. Not one particular source, but all of them in general need adequate and evenly access.
You know, okay, I'll start off with the transparency and the trust inside the organization. Many years ago when I became chief, it was who you know and whether and what kind of discipline you got. But so what we did was we created a peer review board that our employees have the opportunity to go before they come before the chief on their any discipline. And we also created a matrix system, and that matrix system is very specific in the type of discipline that the officer gets. Everyone is treated equally in the organization. As far as more transparency, every major incident, including officer-involved shootings that we've had, have been investigated by the Texas Rangers. That was part of something that we wanted to do. From day one I took office, if we had an officer-involved shooting, DPS or Texas Rangers took over for that purpose.
Not rebut. So if you pay attention to the news, folks, whenever we had the last officer-involved shooting, our administration was in front of the camera talking about the shooting, and that's being too transparent to the point with what I just said, that we may be taking the investigation. When you have Texas Rangers in the background going like this, is there anything that you can do about your administration giving up information about this shooting? It's not good for anybody. It's not good for business. I'm not saying I wouldn't give the media the information they needed, but we just need to take care of the case.
You know, I for sure get a chance to rebuttal, don't I? I will say that every incident that we've had, I have worked closely with the Rangers in regards to what can be released and what can't be released. But you, as taxpayers and citizens, if your police department is involved in a shooting, you expect to hear from me as swiftly and precisely into what's about to happen and what has happened. And I've held that commitment to our community from day one, and I will hold that community till the day I'm no longer chief. I owe you the transparency that you ask and that you deserve, and that's what I will continue to do, period. The Texas Rangers don't run the San Angelo Police Department. You do, and I answer to you, not them.
Should the police department place more emphasis than it does now on ordinary traffic law enforcement? Seeing drivers run red lights and stop signs, making dangerous lane changes is a daily event for nearly everyone who drives in San Angelo. What activities would the department have to scale back on in order to do more traffic enforcement?
Where do you want to start?
Let's start with Chief Vasquez.
Okay. Citations are down. This is a phenomenon that's occurring across the country. DPS, who is our major traffic enforcer in the state of Texas, has continuously gone down as well. Doing the research after this has been talked about, I decided to look it up. When we look at 2010, for instance, 7,380 speeding tickets. 2015, 7,900. Traffic, which is running red lights, something 454 in 2010, 556 in 2015. We are seeing an increase in citations in those violations that cause accidents. We're seeing less citations in equipment violations, and obviously the legislature has changed the laws where we don't write citations in schools anymore. I think that's part of the significant decrease.
When you have a community that's a retirement community, and when you have a base, a couple colleges, that you're just, that's a bad combination already as far as the different types of drivers that we have. So it would be hard because you're talking about the entire city of San Angelo as far as traffic lights and stop signs. And we do have a traffic control program that we address issues as far as when folks call in and say, we're having these problems in this area. We try to put those officers there when we can.
I'll agree with Lieutenant Hernandez. You can only do with what you have. And right now, with the manpower on patrol, the motor division is not as big as it once was, which is the traffic section, to go out and address issues of, problems. We got a lot of youngsters with the little hot rod cars, and we've seen the results of some of their racing events and the wrecks that's happened. We have got to get back to it, but it's all about what I said earlier. We have to restructure the police department to be as efficient as we possibly can. And the way it's structured right now, it's not. When I was a police officer, there was 137. We made every call. You didn't do online calls. We took care of traffic. We took care of everything that was needed in the city, and there's only a few more thousand people than when I was there. So we can do it again with what we have.
You turn on the news every night, that's what you see is wrecks. I will agree there's far more going on in the wrecks, but 2010 to 15 accidents have increased 10.5%. For 2014 to 2015, citations down 3,724. I'll restate my point, is getting back to district-style policing rather than sector. These guys are chasing calls in a sector-style policing atmosphere. Need to get them back into districts and let them focus on that particular area. And leadership is also, you put somebody in that position that they want to work for, they're going to do more. They're not working at their most potential that they can right now. I think with proven leadership, they'll increase that.
Can I do a rebuttal? Thank you. I think when you're looking at the accidents involved and the transparency, yes, we see more accidents. But why do we see more accidents? Because we reach out on the internet or on our phone, and we're looking at Facebook and San Angelo Live and Standard Times and KLST. Everybody's chasing wrecks right now. It's what's making the stories, and that's what you're reading. It's over and over again. We saw a slight tick in accidents last year, and we're projecting it to actually be maybe less this year than it was last year. So you see more, but just because there's more for you to see.
Question. All right. One last question then. Presume you're elected. Describe for us what the public safety landscape is going to look like 4 years from now after you've been a leader for 4 years. And we'll start with Mr. Vasquez. After you continue for another 4 years, what will
After
it
I
look
continue
like?
for another 4 years, my goal is 50 and 50. So I'd like to get us a 50% decrease in crime from the time I became chief in
That's
2004.
any kind of crime.
All
not-
over,
yeah,
overall
just
crime,
random
overall crime, total
Yeah,
crime.
Okay.
And before I turn 50, which I would turn 50 in my next tenure, So that's my focus. I think you would continue to see the landscape of policing that we do today, maybe more innovation as more innovation comes forward. That being said, I think that I would still continue to fight for more staffing and ask council to provide that for us so that we can offer more services than what we do now.
I think the population will increase, and I will too fight with city council to add more manpower to our police department. Crime has been on the increase. What he tells you is based on 2004 stats when we took a large number of gas drive-offs, which we no longer do. I want to see that drop. I want the citizens to feel more comfortable in their home. I want to increase the manpower in patrol, increase the manpower in narcotics, and give comfort to the citizens, make them feel more comfortable.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually build, like I said earlier, the bridges across the board, from the media to the public, to our children, to city leaders. We're going to work together. We're going to make things happen, and we can do it together as a team. We've been working by ourselves for so long. I mean, the city's against the police department's against the city, the public's against the police department, the relationship's broke. When you have so many disgruntled people and not flowing in the same direction, you're going to have problems. What you would see, should I get elected, is in 4 years, you're going to love the relationship that we're going to have, and you're going to see a hard-working chief that'll work for you each and every day.
Integrity, leadership, and values are back in the office. Crime is down. Perception is we have more officers because you're being taken care of. Officers are proud to work here again, and you are safer and secure in your community.
This is the final question for each one. We'll start with. Oh, excuse me. We're out of time. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. We appreciate it. Thank you again.
Do we get closing statements, or are we done?
We're done.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm sorry, they closed me out.
Prepared that speech for nothing.